Hey reptile geeks, welcome back to another video here. Today I want to actually talk about something that I saw that really kind of I was a little upset about, and I really want to bring this up. It's very, very important, and if you guys are reading the title of this video, you guys know what I'm talking about here. So we're gonna go ahead and discuss this video that the animal rights so-called, I guess you can call it PETA, that made this video, in the reptile, breeding community. So let's go ahead and talk about that video here right now. So a couple weeks ago on PETA's Facebook page, and well, if any of you guys don't know, if any of you guys are familiar with PETA or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, has been around for literally since the 1980s, and while they actually seem to care a lot for, the rights for animals, they've also received some heavy criticism from certain topics that have been brought up about them. Now, just a couple weeks ago, I was scrolling on Facebook, and well, a post made by PETA actually appeared on there, and it was actually about percentage rate of snakes in captivity. Now, what they stated in the beginning of the video, one thing that I could definitely tell you guys is that the video showed some snakes that were in poor condition in the video. And there was a few different ones. Some of them mainly were pythons in particular. One was a reticulated python, actually a couple of them were, and one I guess was a ball python that was not really doing too well. Now, when it came to this art post that I saw on Facebook, I could definitely tell there were a few things that were actually, that they said were some misinformation on there. And the first one that got brought to my mind was the percentage rate of snakes in captivity dying within their first year. They stated that they said about 75% of snakes in captivity die within their first year in the pet trade. Now, they did not specifically actually get the whole thing right. What the real factor here is that 75% of snakes and reptiles that are taken out of the wild and are put in captivity usually die within their first year of being introduced into the pet trade. That's the thing PETA did not actually put in their video there, you guys. They just, sometimes they like to actually twist the words around with certain topics. Reptile breeding, has been around for decades. It's been around as far back, it's like the 1960s or 70s, and at first, yes, many of them were imported out of the wild into captivity and stuff, because really nobody was really doing, all sorts of breeding projects and stuff for people to have a pet reptile or a pet ball python. Well, for years and years, we would have exotic animals that would be imported here into the US out of the country until it was officially banned here in the United States back in over a decade ago sometime, where the government actually put an official ban that nobody would be allowed, we would not be allowed to import or export any exotic animals around the world. And a lot of people in the PETA community have heavily criticized the reptile community of keeping snakes in certain enclosures, kind of like the ones that I keep, whereas a lot of them say that these snakes need to be free and stuff, they don't deserve to be locked in a cage and stuff, and yada yada yada. They are saying they don't need our care. That's where they don't actually know the full backstory of the history of the reptile captive reptile breeding. The thing is what I just mentioned moments ago too, is that the government, you guys, banned the both import and export of exotic animals, including snakes was one of those exotic animals. What PETA is trying to say is saying that all snakes deserve freedom. What does that make about the Burmese pythons, in South Florida? I mean, they're literally thriving in the Florida Everglades, and they are not native to the state of Florida. They're not even native here to the US at all. What is exactly PETA trying to do here? Now, I will admit, there is a couple things that I do agree with PETA in animal rights and stuff. But when it comes to this video that I saw PETA that posted, there was some misinformation on it. Now, it's not the reptile's fault that some of them get sick, in captivity. There could be several possible reasons of why somebody's pet reptile has gotten sick. That I have kept so many pet reptiles here. Hold on a second. You guys know my girl, I'm gonna give an example here. My girl Ariel, my gorgeous looking ghost corn snake. I've had her for several years since she was just a little girl, and She has been living inside this terrarium, this beautiful 3-foot tall skyscraper terrarium made by ZooMed for a couple of years now, and she has done amazing in here. This is like this was a big step up from when she was in like this 20-gallon tank here. This is what she was in for a few years until she started to outgrow it, and I knew she had to get an upgrade. And this was the big one right here. And you guys can tell, since it's a vertical terrarium, she's able to climb up and stuff, and she seems to like once in a while will perch up there on that branch from time to time, because that's like one of her favorite spots to sit, and it's pretty close to her heat lamp right there, so she can absorb some of the heat that's, you know, emitting off the light bulb. Now, obviously, yeah, she may not have a height in here, but obviously she's a pretty good burrower as well. She likes to burrow her face down into the bedding. So if she wants to go, you know, do place to hide, she can bury herself in the bedding pretty easy here with no issue. Because this is like cocoa fiber bedding, so it's a little bit loose soil, and that makes it pretty easy for her to burrow her face in with no issue whatsoever. For anybody that actually supports PETA and thinks that these snakes deserve to be free in the wild, here's the problem with that. If you don't know, a lot of these snakes that they are sold at reptile shows or on websites, these have been produced in captivity for generations. So these reptiles, you guys, are not really meant to be free back out into the wild, because these snakes that have been produced in captivity from one generation after another actually will carry some different, you know, potential diseases that could actually pose a threat to native wildlife in the wild. The thing is, everybody, is that a lot of the exotic animals that we have in the reptile community are not native here to the United States. And like I mentioned before in this video, the government has banned the US from allowing to export any exotic animals outside of the United States. So that means federally we cannot release any exotic pack animals that have been produced in captivity for generations and ship them in crates and export them back to their native habitats. We cannot do that. For any of you guys that are PETA supporters and really want these things to be free, hate to break your hearts, but we cannot export these animals out of the country. It's not that simple. It's impossible. Pet reptiles, they're here to stay whether you guys like it or not. And there's nothing really much, you know, PETA can do about it. I mean, if they want to continue to spread some misinformation like I just shared earlier, they really need to do a better job of doing their homework and stuff, and start being more truthful and honest about the reptile community, because they're trying to paint us as bad people, which we are not. Because not only we just don't keep pet reptiles for ourselves just as pets, you know, we also use these reptiles also for education classes for, you know, young kids and going to local schools, just to show how amazing these animals are, but also to educate people the misinformation that has been spreaded about them throughout the world and stuff. You know, I understand people have their own personal beliefs and stuff, but when it comes to spreading misinformation stuff, that is not good whatsoever. That's really, you know, trying to brain rot people into believing something that's not exactly true. So yeah, that's why a lot of reptiles you see in captivity, you guys, they have been produced, you know, in breeding businesses for generations instead of being collected from the wild. Because again, you know, importing exotic animals, as I said, you know, out of the country, it has been banned. I just want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Do you really think PETA really needs to actually step down for a while and actually start becoming more open and honest with everybody with some of the misinformation that they have spread, you know, in the pet trade and stuff? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But overall, I don't really like PETA because, again, they just spread a lot of negative information about animals and stuff. It just really irritates me, you know, they trying to paint us as like supervillains, which many reptile breeders are not. I have met several of them. If you guys remember, I've been to the Tinley Park Reptile Show twice now, and most of the breeders that I have encountered there at their booths, they have done an incredible job of taking care of all those snakes and other reptiles that they had on display there. They've worked their butts off very, very, very hard. They always, you know, make sure the animal's health and safety comes first. That's very, very valid right there. That's a very valid statement. It's hard to properly explain this because it irritates me that, you know, some non-profit organization is literally bashing a harmless community that's literally been around for generations, and, you know, it's trying to make the reptile world a more positive place. But PETA, they just want to make it more negative. You know, which is kind of sad. That's all they care about, is being so negative and stuff. But I think the best thing we can do is try to you know, stop misinformation and provide the real stuff out there about, you know, what these reptiles, how these reptiles are. And I actually want to say one thing too, very, very important. A lot of these snakes, you guys may not know this, but a lot of them that have lived in captivity, the lifespan percentage ratio of reptiles in captivity is much higher than their wild counterparts. For example, you know, my garter snake Lucy, you know, she is native here to the state of Michigan, but she was born in captivity. If Lucy had been released into the wild immediately after she was born, her chances of survival are pretty slim, because the average lifespan of a wild garter snake is usually about 2 to 3 years, which is not really that long. Whereas for Lucy, you guys, she is, let's see, what year is it, 2025? She is almost 7 years old now. This August, she will be 7 years old. So she has literally outlived quite a bit compared to her wild counterparts very well. And obviously you guys have seen how beautiful looking she is, and she has had no signs of any health issues whatsoever. No scale rot, no issues with no respiratory infections, no like stuck shed, none of that whatsoever. She is like 100% healthy. She's very active, on alert, and moves around her enclosure once in a while. And sometimes when I do come home, she kind of comes up to me towards the edge of the cage and kind of greets me with a little welcome home when I come home from work. But yeah, that's really all I got to say for this video, everybody. I hope all of you guys learned a little bit here of this post made by PETA. And again, feel free to express your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you really think that PETA needs to actually start being more positive, you know, on their platform, and actually share a little bit on the pros and cons of, you know, reptile breeding and stuff? Who knows if they even listen, but anyways, let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments down below. And I will go ahead and wrap this video up, everybody, and I will see you guys in the next one.